The first crack in the perfect facade. The courtroom was silent. The air was thick with tension, the weight of 1,000 unspoken words pressing down on the people seated inside. The judge, an older man with a stern face and wise eyes, adjusted his glasses and leaned forward. "Young lady, do you understand what you are saying?" The 15-year-old girl standing before him swallowed hard, but held her ground. Her hands trembled slightly at her sides, but her voice was steady, strong. "Yes, Your Honor," she said, her blue eyes locking onto the man seated at the defendant's table. "And I have proof." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The jury members exchanged glances. The court reporter's pen moved furiously across her notepad, and the defendant's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. But the man at the center of it all, Richard Calloway, a name known in elite business circles and high society, remained still, his broad shoulders squared, his suit impeccably pressed. His expression was unreadable, but his fingers tapped a slow rhythm against the polished wooden table, the only sign of his rising tension. The judge's gavel struck once. "Order," he commanded, the sharp sound echoing through the chamber. Then, turning back to the girl, he asked, "What proof?" She hesitated, not out of fear, but because she knew that once she spoke the next words, nothing would ever be the same again. Taking a deep breath, she lifted her chin. "The truth," she said, her voice unwavering. "And I'm going to tell it." A hush fell over the room. Every person sat on the edge of their seat, waiting. But how had it come to this? How had a 15-year-old girl ended up in court, facing down her own father? It all started months ago, on a cold autumn evening, when she found something she was never supposed to find. The beginning of the end. Emily Calloway's life had always seemed picture-perfect from the outside. Her father was a successful businessman, known for his charm, his sharp mind, and his seemingly endless wealth. Their home was a stunning estate in an exclusive neighborhood, complete with manicured gardens and expensive cars. Her mother, Julia, played the role of the perfect wife, always smiling, always poised, always pretending, because that was what their lives were, a performance. Emily had been playing her part for years, pretending not to notice the cold glances between her parents, the strained silences, the way her mother's hands shook when she thought no one was looking. She had even ignored the way her father's mood would darken unpredictably, how his temper would flare at the smallest inconvenience. But one night, the facade cracked. It had been a normal evening, or so it seemed. Emily had been studying in her room when she heard raised voices from downstairs. "I told you not to ask questions," her father's voice, sharp and controlled, sliced through the quiet of the house. "I deserve to know." Her mother shot back, her tone unusually fierce. Emily froze. Her mother never argued back. Curious, she crept out of her room and tiptoed to the staircase, crouching low to stay hidden as she peered toward her father's study. The door was slightly ajar, and through the gap she could see them. Her mother stood rigid, her arms wrapped around herself. Her father loomed over her, his expression unreadable, but his eyes were dark with something dangerous. "Stay out of it, Julia," he warned, his voice low, menacing. There was a pause. Then something crashed. Glass shattered. Emily's breath caught. She scrambled back to her room, shutting the door quietly, pressing her back against the wood as her heart pounded. Her mother was right. Her father was hiding something, and Emily was going to find out what. A dangerous discovery. The next day, while her father was at work and her mother was out running errands, Emily made her move. She had never dared to enter his study before. It was his sanctuary, his kingdom, the one place in the house that felt completely off-limits. But today, she ignored that. Her hands trembled as she turned the knob. The door creaked slightly as she pushed it open. The room was pristine, as always, bookshelves lined with expensive leather-bound volumes, polished mahogany furniture, and a single grand desk in the center. Emily moved quickly, knowing she didn't have much time. She approached the desk, her heart hammering. She had seen him open a locked drawer before. She knew where he kept his most private documents. She reached into her pocket, pulling out a hairpin. Her fingers were shaky, but she forced herself to focus. She had watched enough YouTube tutorials to know how to do this. Click. The drawer slid open. Inside, there were stacks of documents, thick envelopes filled with cash, and a small black notebook. She hesitated before picking it up, flipping it open. As she read the first few pages, her stomach dropped. The entries weren't just about business. They were about people, names, dates, payments, transactions that didn't make sense, bribes, blackmail, threats, and worse. Her father wasn't just a businessman. He was something else, something much, much worse. Emily's breath came fast and shallow. She pulled out her phone and snapped pictures of the pages as quickly as she could, her hands shaking. She had no idea what all of it meant yet, but she knew one thing. Her father wasn't the man the world thought he was. And she had the proof. A game of shadows. Emily locked the drawer back carefully, making sure everything was exactly as she had found it. Then she rushed back to her room, her heart pounding. She needed to tell someone. But who? Her mother? No, if she was right, her mother already knew something. But if she confronted her, it would put her in danger. The police? Would they even believe a 15-year-old girl? Her best friend? Yes, Olivia. Grabbing her phone, Emily texted her. I found something. I need your help. Seconds later, the reply came. On my way. Emily exhaled shakily. She had no idea what she was getting herself into, but one thing was clear. This was bigger than she had ever imagined, and if she wasn't careful, it could destroy everything. Just then, the front door opened. Emily's blood ran cold. Her father was home early. Her hand shook as she shoved her phone under her pillow and forced herself to sit at her desk, pretending to study. Footsteps echoed through the house. They stopped outside her door. Knock. Knock. Emily? Her father's deep voice sent shivers down her spine. She swallowed hard. Yeah. The door opened slightly. He leaned in, scanning her room. You've been home all day? He asked. Yeah. Studying, she said, forcing her voice to stay steady. She gestured at the open textbook in front of her, feigning boredom. He studied her for a long moment. His gaze was sharp, searching. Then, finally, he nodded. Good girl. The door shut. Emily let out a shaky breath, her heart pounding in her ears. She wasn't safe. She had just opened Pandora's box, and she had no idea how to close it. Secrets in the dark. The silence in the house was suffocating. Emily sat frozen at her desk, gripping her pen so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her father's footsteps receded down the hallway, back toward his study. She waited, listening. A door creaked open. A pause. Then a sharp bang, his fist slamming against the desk. Her breath hitched. Had he noticed something was off? Had she put everything back exactly as it was? Seconds stretched into an eternity. Then silence. Emily forced herself to breathe. She reached under her pillow and pulled out her phone, her hands trembling. The pictures were still there, the evidence safe. She wanted to tell Olivia everything, but her instincts screamed at her to wait. Her father was unpredictable, watching, calculating. One wrong move, and he would know. For now, she had to act normal. For now, she had to pretend. A friend in the shadows. The next morning at school, Emily found Olivia sitting in the cafeteria, stirring her cereal with a spoon, lost in thought. Liv, Emily whispered, sliding into the seat next to her. Olivia looked up, and one glance at Emily's face made her frown. What happened? Emily hesitated. She glanced around. Cafeteria noise, students chatting, laughter. But any one of them could be listening. Not here, she said. Meet me in the library after lunch. Olivia nodded, the worry deep in her brown eyes. When they finally met in the back corner of the library, where no one could overhear them, Emily pulled out her phone and scrolled through the pictures. "You were right," she whispered. "My dad. He's into something. Something bad." Olivia leaned in, her expression serious. "Show me." Emily handed her the phone. Olivia's eyes scanned the images. Names, transaction logs, secret notes. Then she froze. "Wait," Olivia muttered, zooming in on one of the entries. "I know this name." Emily's stomach twisted. "What?" Olivia pointed. "Elliot Graves, the senator who died in a car accident last year. His name's here." Emily's breath caught. "You're saying—" "I'm saying this wasn't an accident," Olivia said grimly. "Your father was involved." A chill ran down Emily's spine. She had expected business fraud, maybe illegal money transfers, but murder. She suddenly felt sick. "What do I do?" she whispered. Olivia thought for a long moment. Then she said, "You need to go to the police." Emily's chest tightened. "And say what?" "That I picked the lock on my dad's drawer and found some notes." "That won't be enough." "But if we keep digging—" "Olivia," Emily cut her off. "If we keep digging, we're gonna get buried." Silence stretched between them. Olivia exhaled and looked at her. "So what now?" Emily didn't have an answer. A warning comes too late. That night, Emily barely slept. She kept thinking about the names, the transactions, the possibility that her father had ordered people killed. By the time she sat down for breakfast, she felt like a ghost of herself. Her father was reading the newspaper, his expression unreadable. Her mother sat quietly, barely touching her coffee. Emily forced herself to eat, acting normal, pretending. And then, buzz. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. She pulled it out under the table, heart racing. Unknown number. Her breath hitched. Slowly, she opened the message. "You made a mistake." Emily's stomach turned to ice. Another message followed immediately. "Now you're going to pay for it." She gripped her phone so tightly her fingers ached. The air around her felt too thick to breathe. She forced herself to look up. Her father was still reading the newspaper. Calm. Unbothered. Was this him? Or was it someone else? Emily didn't respond. She tucked the phone away, barely able to keep her hand steady. That night, she locked every door and window in her room. She hid her phone under her pillow, but she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. And when she finally drifted into a restless sleep, she didn't hear the sound of her window unlocking, or the shadow that moved just beyond her curtains. The stranger in the night. A sharp tap against the glass woke her. Emily bolted upright, her heart slamming against her ribs. She barely had time to react before she saw it. A figure stood outside her bedroom window. A tall silhouette, unmoving, barely visible in the dim glow of the streetlights. A cold terror gripped her. Was it her father? Was it someone else? Her hand shot toward her phone. She fumbled with the screen, her fingers shaking, and texted Olivia. "Someone's outside my window." A second later, another tap against the glass. Emily's breath caught in her throat. The figure wasn't trying to break in. It was waiting. Her phone buzzed. Olivia's response. "G out of the house. Call the police." Emily swallowed, gripping the baseball bat she kept by her bed. She stood up slowly, every movement careful. She reached for her curtains, her pulse so loud she could hear it in her ears. And then, the figure moved. Not toward her, but away. Emily's breath hitched. Whoever it was, they weren't trying to break in. They wanted her to know they were there. They wanted her to be afraid. A deadly game begins. The next morning, Emily checked her phone again. Another message. No threats this time. Just an address. And 2 words. "Come alone." Her entire body went cold. She stared at the message, heart pounding. Whoever this was, they were done playing games. Emily had a choice. She could run, or she could fight. She exhaled shakily and made a decision. She was going to that address, but she wasn't going alone. Because this time, she was setting the trap. Walking into the lion's den, the morning sun did nothing to warm the chill in Emily's bones. She stood in the middle of her bedroom, staring at her phone screen. The message still glowed like a beacon, taunting her. Come alone. Attached, an address. Her fingers hovered over the reply button. A part of her wanted to ignore it, to pretend it never happened. But deep down, she knew she had no choice. Whoever sent this wasn't going to stop. Emily clenched her jaw, gripping the phone so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She wasn't walking into this blindly. She was setting her own trap. The plan. Emily met Olivia in the back hallway of the school, away from prying eyes. You're actually thinking about going? Olivia hissed, looking at the phone screen. I have to, Emily whispered. This isn't just about me anymore, Liv. If I don't find out who's behind this, they won't stop. They'll come after my mom. After you. Olivia exhaled sharply, pacing. Okay, if you're doing this, then you're not going alone. They said I had to. And you really think they're gonna keep their word? Come on, Emily. This is a trap. Emily sighed, shaking her head. I know. Olivia looked at her for a long moment, then finally said, then let's make it a trap for them instead. A plan started to form. They needed proof. If Emily was going into this, she needed evidence. She needed to record everything. Olivia made a call to Lucas Hayes, the best hacker and tech genius in their school. The guy was reckless, but if anyone could help them, it was him. By lunch, Lucas had met them in an empty classroom, grinning as he pulled out a tiny high-tech recording device. You'll be able to hear everything through your phone, Lucas explained, sticking the device into the lining of Emily's jacket. It's voice-activated. We'll record everything, and if anything goes south, Olivia cut in. We call the cops. Immediately. Emily took a deep breath and nodded. This was it. She was walking into the lion's den. The meeting. That night, Emily stood at the edge of a deserted parking lot, her breath misting in the cold air. The address had led her to an abandoned gas station on the outskirts of town. The neon sign flickered weakly, casting eerie shadows across the cracked pavement. Emily swallowed. In her pocket, her fingers curled around her phone. Olivia and Lucas were listening in. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. The inside of the gas station was dark, except for a single dimly lit bulb in the back. Empty shelves lined the walls, covered in dust. And then she saw him. A man stood near the counter, tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in a sleek gray suit. His hands were tucked into his pockets, but Emily could feel the tension radiating from him. He wasn't her father. But somehow he was worse. His presence commanded the room. He owned it. Emily's stomach clenched. This man wasn't just someone working for her father. This man was the real power behind it all. He tilted his head slightly. Emily Calloway. I was starting to think you wouldn't show. Emily kept her expression neutral. You left me a pretty convincing invitation. The man chuckled, his voice smooth. Smart girl. Who are you? She asked, cutting straight to the point. The man stepped closer, the dim light catching the sharp angles of his face. You already know the answer to that. Emily clenched her fists. You're the one helping my father, aren't you? Helping. The man let out an amused hum. That's an interesting choice of words. Emily's heart pounded. He wasn't denying it. She took a slow breath. Then why am I here? The man finally stopped a few feet from her, his cold eyes studying her. Because you don't understand what you're up against, he said. And I think it's time you learned. Before Emily could react, the door behind her slammed shut. She spun around. Two men stood blocking the exit. Her pulse spiked. She had walked straight into a trap. The truth hurts. Emily forced herself to stay calm. She still had her phone. Olivia and Lucas were listening. The cops would come. She just had to keep him talking. "What do you want from me?" she demanded. The man smiled. "I want you to understand something, Emily." He stepped even closer, his voice lowering. "You think your father is the villain in this story. You think if he goes away, everything will go back to normal." Emily's jaw tightened. "But the truth is, your father is just a pawn." Her breath hitched. "You didn't really think he built all of this on his own, did you?" The man smirked. "The power, the wealth, the connections. No, he was given them. Because he was useful." Emily's stomach twisted. Her father had always acted like he was untouchable, like he owned the world. But this man was saying otherwise. "Your father was nothing before we made him," the man continued. "And now, he's become a problem." Emily's hands curled into fists. "Then why protect him?" The man let out a short laugh. "Who said we were protecting him?" Her heart stopped. "You think the FBI case is going to hold?" He shook his head. "It won't. We made sure of that. But your father, he's getting sloppy, careless." Emily's mind raced. Her father wasn't being saved. He was being set up to take the fall. "So let me get this straight," she said, her voice steady. "You're going to let my father crash and burn, and you're making sure no one ever finds out who was really behind everything." The man smiled. "Now you're catching on." Emily exhaled sharply. "And me." The smile faded. "You're a loose end." Her stomach dropped. That was the real reason she was here. Before she could react, one of the men grabbed her from behind, yanking her arms behind her back. Emily struggled, kicking, twisting. Then, a loud bang. The front window shattered. Emily hit the ground just as headlights flooded the gas station. Sirens. Her heart leaped. Olivia and Lucas had called the cops. The man in the suit didn't move, even as officers stormed inside, guns raised, shouting orders. Even as his men backed away, hands up, he just turned to Emily, his expression unreadable. Then, as the police grabbed him, he leaned down slightly and whispered, "You still don't get it, do you? This isn't over. You just made it worse." Emily's breath caught in her throat. Then why was he smiling? "The devil you know." The red and blue lights of the police cars painted the abandoned gas station in streaks of flashing color. Officers swarmed the area, shouting commands, detaining the suited men, and securing the scene. Emily sat on the cold pavement, her hands trembling, her mind still reeling from what had just happened. "You just made it worse." Those were the last words the man in the suit had whispered before the officers dragged him away. Even now, he wasn't afraid. Even now, he was smiling. And that terrified her. The interrogation. An hour later, Emily found herself sitting in a dimly lit interrogation room at the local police station. Across from her sat Agent Miller, a woman in her late 30s with sharp eyes, auburn hair tied in a tight ponytail, and an expression that told Emily she didn't have time for nonsense. "Do you want to tell me," Miller said, folding her hands on the table, "what the hell you were thinking?" Emily swallowed. You were supposed to let us handle this," Miller snapped. "Instead, you walked right into their hands. Do you have any idea how close you came to disappearing tonight?" Emily flinched but forced herself to sit up straighter. "I didn't have a choice. If I didn't go, they would have come after me, or worse, my mom." Miller exhaled sharply. "You don't understand what you're dealing with." "Then explain it to me." Emily shot back, frustration bubbling up. "Because all I know is that my father isn't just guilty. He's a pawn. And the people pulling the strings, they're still out there." Miller leaned back in her chair, studying Emily in silence. Finally, she said, "What do you know?" Emily hesitated, then reached into her jacket pocket, pulling out her phone. She tapped the screen, opening her recording app. "I recorded everything," she said, setting the phone on the table. Miller's expression didn't change, but Emily swore she saw a flicker of approval. "You're smarter than I gave you credit for," Miller murmured. She picked up the phone, plugged it into a laptop, and played the audio. The recording was clear. The man in the suit, the one who had arranged her meeting, the one who had tried to erase her, had admitted that her father was never truly in control, that he had been created, that this entire operation, the money laundering, the bribes, the murders, was bigger than anyone had realized. And worst of all, they wanted Richard Calloway to take the fall. When the recording ended, silence filled the room. Miller slowly shut the laptop. "You just handed us the biggest break in this case," she admitted. Emily's shoulders sagged in relief. "So, you can stop them." Miller's jaw tightened. "We can try." Emily frowned. "What do you mean?" Miller sighed, rubbing her temples. "This isn't just about your father anymore. Whoever these people are, they have power, connections. If they want something buried, they'll bury it, including evidence, witnesses, even entire investigations." Emily's stomach twisted. "So what do we do?" Miller leaned forward. "You let us handle it now." Emily wanted to believe her. She really did. But deep down, something in her gut told her this wasn't over. The missing piece. The next morning, Emily and Olivia sat on the floor of Olivia's bedroom, their laptops open, stacks of printed documents scattered between them. "I don't get it," Olivia muttered, scrolling through article after article. "These people, whoever they are, they're ghosts. No names, no paper trails, no digital footprint. How does someone that powerful not leave any evidence behind?" Emily bit her lip, flipping through the copies of her father's old records. "Because they don't exist legally. They work in the dark. They use people like my dad to do their dirty work, and when they're done, they let them take the fall." Olivia sighed, leaning back against the bed. "So what do we do now?" Emily hesitated. Then she pulled out her phone and opened a contact. "Lucas," she quickly typed. "Need you to find something for me." Discreetly. A few seconds later, a reply came through. "I was wondering when you'd call. What are we looking for?" Emily exhaled. "Everything on my father's secret accounts. Bank transfers, offshore accounts. Anything that doesn't add up." There was a pause. Then, "This is going to take some time, but I'll find it." Emily shut her phone and turned to Olivia. "We're not done," she whispered. "Not even close. A betrayal uncovered." That night, Emily returned home, her mind racing. Her mother sat at the dining table, staring blankly at her untouched cup of tea. Emily hesitated before walking over. "Mom." Julia Calloway looked up, her face pale. "Emily," she said softly, "we need to talk." Emily's stomach twisted. "About what?" Her mother's hands trembled as she reached for a folded document on the table and slid it toward Emily. Confused, Emily picked it up and unfolded it. Her breath caught. It was a bank statement. A wire transfer. From an offshore account. To Julia Calloway. Emily's heart pounded in her ears. She looked up at her mother. "What is this?" Julia's lips parted, but no words came. Then, finally, she whispered, "I knew." Emily felt the world tilt. "What?" "I knew what your father was doing," Julia admitted, her voice thick with guilt. "I knew for years. I thought if I kept quiet, if I stayed out of it, we would be safe." Emily's vision blurred. Her own mother had known, had benefited, had done nothing. "You lied to me," Emily whispered. Julia's eyes filled with tears. "I was trying to protect you." Emily shot to her feet. "Protect me," she snapped. "Mom, you took his money. You let him do all of this, while people were being hurt, while lives were being destroyed." Her mother's voice cracked. "I didn't know what else to do." Emily took a shaky step back. She felt like she couldn't breathe. Her own mother, the one person she thought she could trust, had been part of this from the beginning. "You're just as guilty as he is," Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. Tears streamed down Julia's face. "Please, Emily, I made mistakes, but Emily didn't wait to hear the rest. She turned and ran. Her mother called after her, but Emily didn't stop. She stumbled out of the house into the cold night air. She couldn't think. She couldn't breathe. All she knew was that she had trusted the wrong people. Again. And now, she was truly alone. The house of lies. Emily's mind raced as she ran through the empty streets, her breath clouding in the cold night air. Her mother had known. She had known. And she had done nothing. The truth burned inside her, twisting like a knife. Everything Emily had thought was real. Her childhood, her family, it had all been a lie. She slowed to a stop near the park, pressing a hand to her chest, trying to steady her breathing. She had nowhere to go. Her father was in jail, her mother had betrayed her, and whoever was really pulling the strings was still out there. She needed a plan. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, her hands shaking. A message from Olivia. "Emily, where are you? What happened?" Emily hesitated. Then, "I need to talk. Are you home?" "Yeah, come over now." Emily turned on her heel and ran. A friend in the fire. Olivia opened the door before Emily even knocked. The second she saw her face, her expression softened. "Oh my God, what happened?" Emily pushed past her into the safety of Olivia's room and let it all out. The secret bank accounts, the wire transfers, her mother's betrayal. By the time she finished, Olivia was pacing, her fists clenched. "So, your mom has been taking hush money for years," she muttered. "And now she suddenly decides to tell you." Emily let out a hollow laugh. "Yeah. Real convenient, huh?" Olivia sat on the edge of her bed, her jaw tight. "What are you gonna do?" Emily exhaled sharply. "I don't know. I can't trust her. And I sure as hell can't go home." "You can stay here," Olivia said immediately. Emily shook her head. "I need more than that. I need proof that she was involved." Olivia hesitated, then slowly reached for her laptop. "Lucas has been digging into your dad's bank accounts," she said. "Maybe he can find something on your mom, too." Emily's stomach twisted. If she's in as deep as I think she is, they might not let her walk away either. Olivia's fingers flew across the keyboard. "Then we find something first." Emily nodded. They had to move fast. The last warning. 2 hours later, Emily's phone buzzed again. A new message. Unknown number. "Go home, Emily, before it's too late." Her heart pounded. Not a threat. A warning. She looked up at Olivia. "They know I left." Olivia stared at the message, her expression hardening. "Then we're running out of time." Emily swallowed. "We need to go back. I need to get into my mom's files. If she was in on this, there has to be something in the house." Olivia hesitated, then grabbed a backpack. "Then let's go." A home no longer safe. The house was dark when they arrived. Emily hesitated at the front door, her hand hovering over the doorknob. It didn't feel like home anymore. She took a deep breath and pushed it open. Inside, everything was silent. Too silent. "Be quick," Olivia whispered, closing the door behind them. Emily nodded and hurried upstairs. Her mother's office was neat, too neat, as if it had been cleaned. Emily's stomach sank. She rushed to the desk, yanking open drawers, shuffling through papers. Nothing. Her hands trembled. Her mother had already covered her tracks. "Emily," Olivia whispered from the doorway. Emily turned and froze. Julia Calloway stood at the top of the stairs, her face pale. "What are you doing?" she asked quietly. Emily's throat tightened, looking for the truth. Julia's eyes flickered to Olivia, then back to Emily. "You need to leave. Now." Emily clenched her fists. "Why?" "Because someone told you to warn me." Her mother flinched. Emily took a slow step forward. "Mom," she whispered, "you have to tell me the truth. All of it." Julia's eyes filled with tears. "I can't." Emily's blood turned to ice. "Then I'll find it myself." She turned toward the door. But before she could take another step, the house erupted. A deafening crash. A blast of air. The front door slammed open. Emily barely had time to scream before men in black suits stormed inside. Nowhere left to run. Get. The command barely registered before Emily was yanked backward. She hit the floor hard. The breath knocked from her lungs. Olivia screamed. Her mother gasped. Emily tried to scramble to her feet, but hands grabbed her, forcing her down. "No," she struggled. "Let me go." A gun cocked. "Stop fighting," a low voice warned. Emily froze. A figure stepped forward, dressed in the same sleek black suit as the others. The man from the gas station. The one who had been arrested. The one who was supposed to be in jail. Her stomach plummeted. "You," she whispered. He smiled. "Didn't I tell you, Emily? This isn't over." Emily's pulse thundered in her ears. Her mother was shaking. Olivia was paralyzed in fear. And Emily. She knew one thing. She had just lost. Captive in the web. Taken. Emily's breath came in short gasps, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. The man in the sleek black suit stood before her, arms crossed, his cold eyes filled with something between amusement and satisfaction. "Didn't I tell you, Emily?" His voice was smooth, almost bored. "This isn't over." Emily's mind reeled. He was supposed to be in jail. How had he gotten out so fast? Before she could process it, two men grabbed her by the arms and yanked her upright. "Let me go," she struggled, twisting violently, kicking at anything she could reach. A sharp slap cracked across her face, sending her head snapping to the side. "Stop," the man ordered, his voice still eerily calm. Emily clenched her teeth, blinking through the sting. She could hear her mother sobbing. Olivia was shouting, begging them to let Emily go. But it was no use. The men dragged her toward the door. "No, no," Emily screamed, her heels skidding against the wooden floor. "Mom, do so me thing." Her mother stood frozen in the hallway, tears streaming down her face. "Julia," the man said, glancing at her. "This is what happens when people don't listen." Julia let out a strangled sob, falling to her knees. Emily's stomach dropped. Her mother had made her choice, and she wasn't going to stop them. A hand clamped over Emily's mouth as she was hauled out the door and into the waiting black SUV. The last thing she saw before the door slammed shut. Olivia, screaming her name. The prison with no bars. The ride was silent. Emily sat in the back seat, her hands bound, her mind racing. The man sat across from her, legs crossed, watching her like she was an insect in a glass jar. "You've been very busy," he finally said, "poking around places you don't belong." Emily glared at him, swallowing the lump in her throat. "What do you want from me?" His lips curved into a slow smile. "We already told you," he said. "You need to stop." Emily clenched her fists. "And if I don't?" The man tilted his head, as if considering something. Then he pulled out his phone and right in front of her, dialed a number. A voice answered. Emily's blood turned to ice. It was her mother. "Julia," the man said casually, "would you like to say goodbye to your daughter?" Her mother let out a choked sob. "Please, please don't hurt her." Emily's stomach twisted. He was playing with her, showing her that he held all the power. Emily gritted her teeth. "Leave her alone." The man smirked. "Then be a good girl and listen." Emily forced herself to breathe. If she wanted to get out of this, she had to be smart. She had to play along. "Fine," she whispered. "What do you want me to do?" The man's smile widened. "Now that's more like it." The offer. The car pulled into a long gated driveway. A massive mansion loomed ahead, dark and uninviting. They led Emily inside, her wrists still bound, down a long hallway lined with expensive paintings and cold marble floors. The man finally stopped in front of a heavy wooden door. "Your father is waiting," he said. Emily's heart stopped. She turned to him, stunned. My father." The man gave her an amused look. "You didn't think we were going to let him rot in prison, did you?" Emily's skin went cold. They had freed her father. And now, they were bringing her straight to him, face to face with the devil. The door opened. Emily was shoved inside. The room was dark, lit only by the dim glow of a fireplace. And there, sitting in a leather chair, was Richard Calloway, her father. His face was the same, strong, unreadable, but there was something different in his eyes, something sharper, colder. He set his glass of whiskey down and stood. "Emily," he said smoothly, "it's been a long time." Emily's stomach twisted. She hadn't seen him since the FBI took him away. And now somehow he was free. "You're working for them," she whispered. Her father let out a low chuckle. "No, sweetheart." He stepped closer. "I always was one of them." Her chest tightened. No, it couldn't be. "All those years," Emily whispered. "The money, the lies, you weren't their pawn." He smiled. "I was their partner." Emily staggered backward. She had spent so long believing that her father had been manipulated, that he had been used. But the truth was worse. He had chosen this. He had been a part of it from the beginning. And now they wanted Emily to take his place. A choice that isn't a choice. "You're at a crossroads, Emily," her father said. "You have two options." Emily's hands trembled, but she kept her expression blank. "Let me guess," she said. "One option is that I just forget everything and live happily ever after." Her father smirked. "More or less." "And the other?" she asked, voice cold. His smile disappeared. "The other is that you disappear," he said simply. Emily's stomach churned. Her father, her own father, was threatening her. But she saw something in his eyes, a flicker of hesitation. Like a part of him didn't want to do this. She had one shot, one chance to turn the tables. So she took it. She tilted her head. "You don't actually want to kill me, do you?" Her father's jaw tightened. "Don't push me, Emily." She stepped forward, pushing anyway. "You don't want me dead," she said, "because I'm the only one who can protect you." His eyes darkened. "What are you talking about?" Emily took a shaky breath. "They set you up," she whispered. "They were going to let you take the fall." His expression flickered, just for a second. Emily pressed harder. "You think you're their equal," she said. "But you're not. You're disposable. And the second you stop being useful." She let the words hang in the air. Her father's hands curled into fists. He knew she was right. "You need me," Emily said, "because I'm the only one who can expose them before they get rid of you." Silence. Then, her father let out a low laugh. "God damn it," he muttered, shaking his head. "You really are my daughter." Emily's heart pounded. Had she won? Then her father turned to the man in the suit. "Call it off." The man stiffened. "Richard." "I said, call it off." Emily held her breath. The man hesitated, then finally pulled out his phone and typed something. A moment later, he nodded. Emily exhaled sharply. She had done it. She had bought herself time. But she knew the truth now. Her father wasn't the villain. He was just another piece on the board. And the real enemy was still watching. The final move. A daughter's gamble. The air inside the grand estate was thick with tension. Emily stood between her father and the man in the suit, two predators watching each other carefully. She had just done something reckless. Turned her father against the people who had once protected him. And now she had only one chance to make her next move count. Her father, Richard Calloway, exhaled slowly, rubbing his jaw. "You think you're clever, don't you?" He murmured, eyes unreadable. Emily didn't flinch. "I think I'm still alive." The man in the suit, her father's supposed ally, stared at Richard with cold calculation. "You're making a mistake," he warned. "Turning against us. You know how that ends." Richard smirked, adjusting the cuffs of his expensive suit. "I do. And yet, here I am." Emily's heart pounded. Her father wasn't doing this because he cared. He was doing it because he knew, the moment he stopped being useful, they would eliminate him. And now, Emily was useful to him. But she also knew something else. He wouldn't protect her forever. She needed a way out. Now. No one leaves this clean. The man in the suit took a slow step forward. "Let's be rational," he said, his voice smooth. "You're not stupid, Richard. You know what we're capable of. You think we don't have contingencies." Richard's jaw tensed, but he didn't answer. The man's eyes flickered to Emily. "And you," he murmured. "You think you've won just because you made your father hesitate. Do you know how many people have tried to outthink us?" Emily forced herself to meet his gaze. "How many of them are still alive?" The man smiled. Emily's stomach twisted. That was the problem. No one walked away from them. Not even Richard Calloway. And certainly not his 15-year-old daughter. Unless. Emily took a slow breath. "What if I make you a deal?" The man raised an eyebrow. "A deal?" Richard stiffened beside her. "Emily, what the hell are you?" She ignored him. "You need control, right?" she said, her voice steady. "You need to make sure nothing gets exposed. You need to clean up the mess my father made." The man's expression didn't change. "Go on." Emily's fists clenched at her sides. "You let me walk away, and I erase everything I found. Every file, every picture, every recording." Richard turned to her, stunned. "Emily, think about it," she interrupted. "If you kill me, you'll never know if I made copies. You'll always be looking over your shoulder." The man considered this. Emily swallowed. She was bluffing. She hadn't made copies. Yet. But they didn't know that. If she could make them hesitate, just for a second, she might have a chance. Checkmate. A long silence filled the room. Finally, the man sighed, shaking his head. "Smart girl." Then he turned to Richard. "You have one last chance," he said. "Get her under control." Richard exhaled, looking at Emily. Then, he did something she never expected. He laughed. A quiet, knowing chuckle that sent shivers down Emily's spine. Richard Calloway turned back to the man in the suit, a smirk tugging at his lips. "You still don't get it, do you?" he said. The man's expression darkened. Richard tilted his head toward Emily. "She's not bluffing," he murmured. "If I know my daughter, she's already sent copies to her little hacker friend, and maybe even the FBI." The man froze. Emily blinked. Her father was bluffing for her. The man turned to her sharply. "Is that true?" Emily's pulse roared in her ears. She could say no. She could tell the truth, that she hadn't actually sent the files anywhere yet. But she saw the fear in the man's eyes, and she knew this was her only chance. So she lied. "Yeah," she said. "It's true." The man cursed under his breath. Emily didn't breathe. Then, he reached into his coat. Emily flinched. Was he going for a gun? But instead, he pulled out a phone. Tapping the screen once, he sighed. "Fine," he muttered. "You win this round, Emily Calloway." Her stomach twisted. What did that mean? She barely had time to process before the front doors burst open. FBI. Armed officers flooded in. The man in the suit's face didn't even flicker. As if he had expected this. The cost of freedom. Everything after that happened in a blur. The man was detained. The house swarmed with agents. Her father, Richard Calloway, stood still, watching it all unfold. Then, slowly, he turned to Emily. "You called them," he murmured. Emily swallowed. "I had to." Her father studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled. "Good girl," he said softly. And then they took him away. Aftermath. 2 weeks later, Emily sat on the porch steps of Olivia's house, staring at the quiet neighborhood. Her father was gone. This time, for good. The FBI had enough evidence to bury him. The organization he worked for. They had gone dark. For now. But Emily knew this wasn't the end. She had made enemies. Powerful ones. And someday they might come for her again. But for now, she was free. Olivia stepped outside, sitting beside her. "You okay?" Emily exhaled. "I don't know." "You did the right thing," Olivia murmured. Emily wasn't sure if that was true, but she nodded anyway. Because the game wasn't over. It had just begun. And Emily Calloway, she was ready for it, no matter what came next. Loose ends never stay loose. The FBI flooded the Calloway estate, their voices sharp as they secured the area. Armed agents restrained the remaining men in suits, including the one Emily had just outmaneuvered. And yet, something felt off. Emily stood frozen as they cuffed her father, Richard Calloway, dragging him toward the waiting cars. He didn't struggle. He didn't fight. He simply turned his head and gave Emily a look she couldn't quite decipher. Then, he smiled. A slow, knowing smile that sent a chill down her spine. Why wasn't he afraid? Why did he look like a man who had already won? The answer came a few seconds later. One of the men in suits, despite being held at gunpoint, tapped his watch. Just once, Emily's stomach dropped. Something was happening. Before she could react. Bang! A single gunshot cracked through the air. Emily flinched as an FBI agent collapsed, blood pooling beneath him. Another shot, then another. Chaos erupted. The men in suits weren't just surrendering. They were fighting back. One of them pulled a blade, slashing an agent's throat. Another lunged for his gun, firing wildly. The FBI scrambled, shouting orders, returning fire. And in the middle of it all, Richard Calloway ran. The chase. No, Emily screamed, her legs moving before she even thought. She bolted after him, dodging through the chaos, the sounds of bullets and screams ringing in her ears. She barely registered Olivia's voice. "Emily, stop." But she couldn't. She wouldn't. Her father wasn't getting away. Not this time. She pushed through the doors, sprinting down the grand driveway. Ahead of her, Richard moved fast, his years of training keeping him ahead. But Emily had rage. She ran harder, faster than she ever had before. They reached the gates. A car idled there, a black sedan, waiting. Her father was about to escape. No. Emily reached into her jacket and pulled out the knife she had stolen earlier. Her father was inches from the car. Emily didn't hesitate. She lunged. The blade slashed across his arm. Richard grunted, stumbling back, blood dripping down his sleeve. The delay was all she needed. FBI agents swarmed him. His escape was over. The final words. They shoved Richard Calloway to the ground, pressing his face into the dirt as they cuffed him. Emily stood over him, her chest heaving, her hands still shaking from the fight. Richard lifted his head slightly, looking at her. For a moment, there was silence. Then, "I underestimated you," he murmured. Emily's jaw tightened. "You destroyed everything," she whispered. "And for what?" Her father exhaled. "Power," he admitted. "But you already knew that." Emily shook her head, tears burning behind her eyes. "Was it worth it?" she asked. Her father smirked. "Ask me in 10 years." The words sent a shiver down her spine, because she understood what he meant. He wasn't afraid. He still thought he would win. Emily hated him for it, but she also knew he wasn't wrong, because men like him, they never truly lost. 1 month later, the trial of Richard Calloway became the biggest case in the country. The FBI charged him with corruption, conspiracy, money laundering, and murder. The secret organization behind him. Most of them disappeared. Some were arrested. Some were never found. And Emily knew. They were still out there. Moving on, or trying to. Emily sat on the steps of Olivia's house, staring up at the sky. "Do you think it's over?" Olivia asked beside her. Emily sighed. "No, but it's quieter now." She didn't know what the future held. But she knew one thing. She had survived. And for now, that was enough. Olivia nudged her. "So, what's next?" Emily smirked, staring at the horizon. "Whatever I want."